Hello, I'm Jessica Giselle. I'm the founder, publisher, and editor of Girls Like Us magazine.
And I'm Mara Itzel. I'm a podcaster and artist, and I organize these series of conversations with girls like us, where we want to talk about our favorite makers and creators of queer spaces for dancing and meeting and online or in real life.
So we're going to make 3 of these episodes. And for the first one, we wanted to talk to MYCKET, a Swedish queer artist architecture collective. I'll introduce them later. But together with them, we made this beautiful issue that came out last January on the queer club. And yeah, I'm very much looking forward to explore a bit further. So I want to be joined today by Catharina Bonnevier and Therese Christiansson, and I let them introduce themselves.
Okay. So my name is Therese Christiansson. Together with Catharina Bonnevier and Mariana Alves Silva, we formed the art, architecture, and design collaboration MYCKET. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Catharina Bonnevier, and yeah, like Therese said, I'm working with her and Mariana, and we're really happy to be here together with you to talk about all these wonderful, exciting things.
Nice. Okay, so then to start off, we thought we can cheer with the drinks, pick me up that we will also share on social media before, so everybody outside that's watching this video can cheer with us. Cheers! Cheers!
Skål!
Santé, where we are.
Santé.
Yeah, and to start off, we were thinking if you can talk a bit about this drink and who invented it and at which parties you drank it at, and yeah, where it comes from.
It was the drink was part of, was it the 12th club scene?
Yeah.
Which was sorry, help me here, Katarina, the name.
Lotta Norlander.
Yeah, exactly. So Lotta Norlander, owner of Bitter Pills bar and restaurant in Stockholm, or former restaurant and bar in Stockholm. Queer space, super important for activism and parties. She invented this pick-me-up drink, and it consists of lime, ginger ale, and basil and Tabasco. And if you like, you can add vodka. Yeah.
Okay.
It's called Pick Me Up.
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, pick me up.
Beautiful double sense, of course.
Yeah.
And also, a lot of the times, Lotta was standing in the bar, and in this bar, Bitter Pills, the first thing when you enter the door, the bar was kind of a little bit down, like you had to go down a little to get to the bar. But Lotta was standing there looking up, and if you looked really like, you know, sore or like tired, she would like immediately pour you a pick me up and say, "Come here and chat." So like really welcoming, friendly atmosphere created by the people in the bar, and the setup, like you were always met by someone when you entered, which I think was one of the really beautiful architectonic and social things that make that bar work so well.
Can you talk a bit more about your experience of going to that bar or going to queer spaces over the years? Because you did a lot of projects there, which led to your research, or which was part of your research. So I think it would be nice to hear a bit more about.
Well, actually, also for this space, like I said, it was the 12th club we made, and in a way, it was the longest club. Usually, the clubs that we reenacted lasted for one night or so. But at Bitter Pills, we did the club called Space is a Pressing Matter. And what we did when we also thought that after this, we had gotten a huge grant to do this research for 3 years tied to the Architecture Museum of Stockholm. And we wanted to summarize it and also like give something back to the queer community. We'd been involving people in our research all through these years, and we wanted to like also give something back to the community that could stay for a while. So what we did is that, we knew that Bitter Pills, a kind of constant location, at least for a couple of years, where queers could go every day and be greeted often by Lotta or Anders Esteche or other people who worked there in the bar. And we thought that they had like a dining room area which needed a little bit more love, and where we thought that we could try out some of the stuff that we had understood during the other 11 clubs that we had done beforehand. And also, so what we did was we redid the dining room area and tried to like saturate it with all our aesthetic and historical knowledge that we've been learning during the previous clubs, kind of. And this work, doing this remaking of the dining room, we do it very hands-on. We paint, we carve, we're there doing the room with our own bodies. We did that publicly during a long time, also because a restaurant can't really close, right? They need to have their business going on. And we knew that this was going to take a long time. So the work of building up that space took maybe half a year, and people would go there and dine during the period of us painting the mural and in all its stages. And that was also like super beautiful. We really like that, encountering our audience also during the making of the space. It also makes, we're so much after building a community, either temporary or more constant communities, but engaging people in the work we do and really connecting and inviting, being transparent with. First, a mural can look really ugly. You start with the bottom layers, and then eventually it like grows. So that was wonderful, actually.
And did you have people from the restaurant, visitors, helping you with painting and making that? Or
we had parts of the queer community of Stockholm definitely helping us with, for example, sawing. The ceiling was covered with beautiful blue silk, because silk is also a really great material. It doesn't burn easily, and it's also super environmental friendly, and it's of course the most beautiful material. So one person from the queer community, Britta, helped us saw that. And let me see who else helped, Katarina.
I'm thinking about the beautiful whips that Ullis Ullgren had one window dedicated to whips and all this whipping practices that's going on. And so she made a curtain of whips of like black leather, plastic, and different kinds of like beautiful shiny and matte materials that became a kind of curtain for the window. So,
and Malin Kent helped out with parts of the carpentry. Annie Jonasson, yeah, actually lots of people.
And the drawing, it's a Shemun drawing, or it says Shemun. Can you talk a bit about the drawing or the content of the drawing?
Maybe I should hold it to the other recording device here. Let's see if I find it again.
It's 100, I think.
For the cover of Girls Like Us, and
or we can also blend it in the video. Actually, you don't have to.
You're right. Anyway, so this we made a huge mural, and Therese said it took more than half a year to create this space. So we were there working slowly on this mural, doing all the other things, and what we wanted to create with this mural was a landscape of queer nightclubs. So it's really a big sort of image of or mapping even of significant clubs around the world. And you mentioned Shemun, and it was a really important nightclub in Paris that became like a second home for many people. It was there over a period of more than 60 years, I think. And lots of like generations have been there and so on, and of course lots of different things happened there. So Shemun was like the entrance of the the real kind of emergency exit of the space became the entrance to Shimun in our like fantasy on this mural. But then there were clubs from Brazil, clubs from the other Nordic countries. Of course, lots of clubs from Stockholm, because we are invested also in the local community in Stockholm. So we have, for instance, the oldest club that we found, which is called Club Diana, or Diana, if you pronounce it a bit more English, which is of course the goddess that has all these nymphs together with her in the forest. But Diana was also a really important forefront figure in a band called Diana Miller Band in the 1950s, and she was a very early, open, loud queer person that toured a lot all across the Nordic countries. So she had, she was this like open magnet. So then they created in the 50s a club called Diana. So, and Diana had to be, at that time in Sweden, the clubs had to be secret and hidden. And there were very few people who could be as courageous as Diana Miller. But but they created this club, and you have to have a membership card and so on. So one of the clubs that we made was a kind of reenactment of this club. So for instance,
was she,
an example.
Was she involved in the Diana? Was she involved in the club, or was it made in honor to her?
It was made in honor to her.
Yeah.
Diana Miller doesn't live anymore, but as a woman playing the bass in her band still lives, but she wasn't there. I mean, she's quite old, but we talked to her. I mean, she's part of, we've been interviewing her and so on.
Nice.
So, but in other like in another club we created, which we related to the Salon culture, that has also been really important for this investigation. And for us, this culture of literary lesbian salons, which we think about as a kind of club, even though it might not be a nightclub dancing, but it's still like a super important semi-public, semi-private meeting space. So we did a salon called Lala Salon, and that was a tribute to a contemporary salon which exists in Beijing in China. And we were so fortunate so we could actually have a few of the members of the Lala Salon in Beijing who are artists, and they were also present at the one we made, and they were showing their artworks and so on. But we always kind of tried to find something contemporary in the theme of the club, but tie it to historical reference material. So with Lala Salon, we tied it to like probably, at least she's known to be like the first feminist of Sweden. That's Fredrika Bremer. She lived in the 19th century, and she had this apartment, which is now a museum. And we were actually able to use this apartment for our remake, our club, club. So we could take away everything that made it into a museum, the runners that protects the carpets and this or this is off limits areas and all that, which we could take all that away and find different ways that we could use, like sit in the furniture, lie in the bed and all that. So we created this fantasy, very boudoir, very much like this kind of clothing. So, and all our guests, they, the first thing that happened when you came to that salon was that you were offered to change your clothes. And we had this wonderful stylistas who helped people to put on like beautiful head wraps or maybe some makeup, some glitter, and so that you could try to walk into this fantasy of what a kind of lesbian salon could have been, out of time somehow, both in the 19th century, but also in our time. So make this kind of, dreamlike space. So that was another example.
Yes.
And can you just say a bit for the people that don't know your practice so well, or like how you started making these events and how you found each other as a group, and or what's how
you built your community also, I guess, or the MYCKET collective.
Well, I mean, we had been me, Marianne, and Katarina had been teaching for a long time at various institutions. We were all engaged in spatial practices or practices that are engaged in art and design. we knew about each other kind of, and were interested in each other, and we all longed to work more propositional ourselves, to build critical spaces, or what do you say? Like, we were also very, we longed for not only criticizing but proposing. Like, and Katarina, at that time, you were teaching a course that is reoccurring still at the architecture school in Stockholm called Architecture and Gender. And I took it, Mariana took it, and then somehow we had a date at a very important cafe in Stockholm that doesn't exist anymore, a queer space called Cafe Copacabana. And there we just realized, I guess we kind of fell in love pretty fast, and we did our first project together in 2012 called the Passerine, which was also part of the Reykjavik Arts Festival later on. And getting to know each other, talking about our lives and how we ended up where we were, we understood that the queer club had been really important for us in different ways, and in shaping who we were. So we thought, and like working a lot with aesthetics and the politics of aesthetics, because we're super concerned about the surface. We thought that we have to dive into this space that has been so extremely important for us, because probably there's something important there. We didn't really know what that was, but I mean, I think that's always good research. You don't really know what you're going to get out of it, but you have a strong intuitive feeling, and you know historically that they have been important. I mean, we knew, but like, okay, what can we find in the spaces architecturally and aesthetically that we later can also use in other situations as architects and planners?
Can you elaborate a bit more on what you found? What were these things? And because I think it's also nice for this talk that we give hints and tools and stuff for people to also work with. So.
But I'm thinking about, because I was just talking to a friend in Montreal, and I was in Montreal when I was 19 together with a group of friends. It was like I'd just taken my like exam from studenten. I don't know what that's in English, but anyway, I had graduated.
High school or something.
Okay, and so we spent one summer in Montreal, just this kind of liberty of becoming adults. And I remember like the club culture there. This was in the late 80s, early 90s, and they were always like really radically decorated, the clubs, like, and beautiful, and they were transformed each night. And I remember stepping into that space where the decor, the people who were there dancing were like, you didn't know what genders, you didn't know who were like infatuated by who. The music was also like really, I mean, it was like this space that kind of became my first step into adulthood somehow. It was like, oh wow, okay, so this is what life is about, and this is what my body can experience. And I think with the club research, returning to your question, I think what has been super important with the research is that all this, like the theory of performativity or queer theory and so on, all that is situated in our bodies, but it's situated in our bodies together with a crowd which forms the club, and together with the decorations of the club, the floor of the club, I mean the sort of the hardcore architecture, of the more stable architecture of the club, and the music and the drinks and what you eat and who you meet, the interaction. So for me, that the entirety of that is what we as architects and planners need to get our hands into. And it's a kind of dirty business in that sense. You get messy, you get sweaty because you dance, but you have to dare your own body and go onto the dance floor, otherwise you can't design a dance floor. So that's really like the main core, like what we have discovered or explored even further, I think, with these clubs. And whenever we meet like architects and planners or other like building industries and or the people who are financing the projects and so on, we always dare them to enter with their own bodies into the project. because we think that that's how we could really transform like the way we build cities or the way we shape spaces around us. So enter with your body. Like that's I think if I only am going to say one thing, that's what I want to say.
I guess we learned a lot about stewardship and hospitality and being hosts, and that is really applicable to spaces. And like if we want to make use, if we often talk about within planning or architecture, in order to be inclusive, you have to be specific. Because if you plan for the lowest common denominator, it might, otherwise it just applies to the norm or no one at all. Like to dare also to be kind of specific about spaces and specific about what are groups going to do here and who's going to be invited, who's going to take care, and then other groups can join in as well. Kind of this kind of, and I think that is at least, that is not has not been the normal way of engaging in processes, because you often think that spaces should be for everyone, but this everyone, who will that be then? You have to really investigate critically who cities are planned for.
Yeah, I think it's important that you mentioned that, because me and girls like us, we've also organized many events and evenings, and especially be specific is also something I learned that can be very helpful. And protocol makes it a bit rigid in a way, but sometimes it is nice to have already thought of certain scenarios in your head, and then when they happen, you can much better anticipate. And I just think like by also like writing down certain ideas you have and be explicit by putting them on the wall, give them as a flyer to people. It really also avoids conflict in a way, and I feel people are way more understanding, I think, and open to what you're trying to say or what you're trying to do. So
because you can always, I mean, if you start out specifically and with your also transparent, maybe with agenda and what's going on, it's different things, also economy, I mean, lots of things. And then I guess what we also learned is we're always open, try to be as open as possible to what happens, because that you can't really control in the end, right? So it's also about like, okay, this is what we proposed, we did our best, and then, okay, let's see what happens.
Which also takes away a lot of the pressure on the sort of the designer, or the people are like, oh, we have to think about everything from the start, and it kind of opens it up towards the process. And I remember at one of the clubs we created, there were going to be like fire speeches, because we wanted to recreate a kind of activist, act up kind of club, from the 90s. So that we were having fire speeches, and I know that someone was, and we had planned it so that they would just happen in the space, and that not everyone would hear them, because they would only happen like more, spontaneous, or seem to be spontaneous. And then some of the guests became really concerned that not everyone was hearing, and like starting to hush everyone, like shh, shh, we can't hear. So it created like, and and we were like, oh, sorry, we thought that was okay that not everybody heard. And that hushing is so much policing. I mean, it's really interesting that happens, but for us it's like, oh my God, someone is policing the space right now. What should we do? Okay, well, that happened, so just let it go and say, okay, we have to think about that, because of course we didn't want anyone to be hushed. So that was something to think about. And then of course at the same club there was also one person starting to taking photographs suddenly, and at that club we had said it was super important that nobody could bring their like starting photographing, because we wanted it to be a space where you could also explore your body. So actually a lot of people became quite naked, and it was really sweaty and dancing on the dance floor, and really like fantastic. And then this person started to like brought out her camera, and that was also like the one who owned the space, the galleries, because at that time we were in an art gallery, and we were like, I just ran to her and I grabbed the camera, because that was such a violent act in that space. But she, I don't know, it probably became a bit too much because, you know, it happened, this happened, what could happen at the club happened, you know, it became really messy. And for her, that was, I think, a way of distancing herself from the mess. Like, oh no, this is also an art gallery and I need to be the art gallerist. And like, no, then you can't have it. Then we will leave, you know. So yeah. So of course the stewardship that Therese talks about, it also is about like making sure that, you know, not really horrible things happen there. So of course the club is not an innocent environment. There are like super important and empowering things happening there, but you also need the kind of the host or the steward to be there and make sure this is not okay. So we have to, you know, also be prepared for that.
Yeah, I also wondered, like, because you do it together with a group, your projects, you think there's a huge difference in working together than people doing it alone? Because my experiences with, especially like the older queer bars, lesbian bars, it was often run by one person who became like the icon of that space, and the whole space, lived or died with that person. But I guess economically it was often quite hard. It maybe also created some kind of competition between different places. I wonder if you have any experience with that, and if working on it collectively, if it solves a couple of these issues maybe from the past, where you more divide your responsibilities, or
I think that, I mean, for us as a group, we really strengthen each other. I become much more brave when I'm with Therese and Mariana, and you know, dare to try things in public that I would have been too stage frightened to try by myself. You know, so it's really about that, but it's also, of course, about like our perspectives. Of course, we're all trained as architects and designers and artists, so we have a training. So in that sense, we are, you know, we kind of reflect each other in some ways. But on the other hand, we are also quite different as like in our interests and our abilities. But we share a common ground in like values and quite a lot of common ground in aesthetics and desires. So that's good. But I think we at least have enough difference so that we also help each other to see things that I wouldn't have seen by myself. You know, thinking about how we position ourselves in the world and what's in front of us. And you know, and Therese and Mariana, they always help me to kind of look a little bit what's behind or in another direction. Or you know, so
give each other's the perspectives that the others might lack, and also in a safe space. I mean, we're so comfortable with each other, and we love each other. We have respect for each other, and we can also dare to say what we don't know, what we lack in knowledge, and what we lack in experience of perspectives. Kind of, and I think we help each other out there a lot. In relation to intersectional perspectives and what we have ourselves experienced that will vary between the three of us. And I really think I cannot imagine at all to have done these clubs on my own. Absolutely not. Also, in relation to what we learned about this hosting and stewarding is really embracing the crowd, because people become so brave when you encourage them and give them love. And this also that does demand to be courageous, right? It's you have to be self-confident, and we create that confidence together and stability.
So I think most when we did this club, we've been working on a project called Champeoke, or it could be translated in English to Struggleoke. So it's a kind of karaoke bar that has songs from the streets, from the demonstrations, from political, the songs of power and struggle and so on. So we made an archive. We tried to collect as many as we could, and we made this into karaoke videos. And then we created a huge bar. It was for a festival in Stockholm 2 years ago. And that festival was, of course, open to anyone who was visiting Stockholm at the time, and it was exceedingly public. I mean, it was super public, because of course it related to the people in Stockholm who passed by, but also a lot of tourists who were there just for a brief time, and people who live in different parts of Stockholm, because this was in the city center, and parts of the city center is at least used by all sorts of people. And it was amazing. And I think that was after many of that wasn't even part of the club scene project. That was another project. But I think having the club scenes, all these clubs that we created together as a base, made it possible for us to do that, and to actually, in the middle of the most hierarchical, patriarchal, super commercial district, it's like, and the beautiful pack of cards that is the old town of Stockholm, it's like the most contested spaces. We're just outside the royal palace, this is like the power concentration of Sweden in some sense. And we were there, and we did this queer, beautiful Stragglioke bar in the faces of everyone. And yeah, I'm so proud of that project, because it was so public in so many ways, and also like in the architecture, because it was like transparent, so you could move in and out and so on.
And people could go there and then sing the songs, and there was like a screen.
Exactly.
Nice.
And I was a little afraid or scared, because we'd always, with a lot of the clubs that we had done beforehand, we'd addressed it specifically to a queer crowd, and then other people could join, but like the queer crowd was definitely a majority kind of. And this space was so extremely public. Like, we knew that a queer crowd would show up, but then anyone else was welcome. And we managed, I'm so proud of that, we managed to, I think, have this safe queer space where others accepted the rules of that space and joined in. And I mean, that's the wonderful thing, right? Because I think we're so many, queer or not queer, who long for another world, or a more fair, just world. And it's also beautiful to open up in that way. And like, people were queuing to get in, and outside these fabric curtains, they were standing and listening and stuff like this. But it was also, I was pretty nervous, absolutely, about being sure that we can keep the safe queer space, although it's super, super, super public. Anyone can show up. And there was actually, but we didn't notice even, but there had been a right-wing demonstration just next to our place, you could say, during the daytime. No one told us, which maybe was a little bit good in a way. But so it was like, there's lots of stuff going on here in the city. All these political wills and stuff can happen, but we managed, and people showed so much support.
That's nice.
It was super. I guess we get so much energy from doing these things, to have the energy and courage to continue lots of different struggles.
Yeah. And if you, because I think it's slowly time.
Well, yeah.
We still have a bit of time.
I would say we can do like around 10 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I was also wondering, like the future of the queer club, if you have ideas about that, because you're so much always digging into the past in a way, taking it to the now, like, yeah, if you have any ideas on that.
People are dying to go dancing again, of course, after this pandemic. So yeah, it's, I think the future is bright. We are going to keep dancing. Of course we are. And the dance will always be political if you're not like, if your body is not what society tells you to be, then the body will be political and your dance will be political. And the dance floor is a really good place to start a political struggle.
Absolutely. And here in, I don't know, but in Stockholm, the like open air scene is huge, and lots of queer open air parties and stuff like that. So I guess it was even before COVID, but after COVID, maybe there'll be like more nature queer post-human clubbing going on. or something.
Yeah, with the animals and
Yeah,
other species joining the
exactly.
party.
Exactly. I mean, now for midsummer, we had, you could call that queer clubs down in Östergötland, here in the rural area in Sweden. So maybe we can also move towards like that the queer club does not have to take place in an urban setting, but we can have it next to the squirrels and pine trees and invite I don't know, the different kind. Yeah, I think so.
So you also insinuate there's going to be even more different ways of partying in a way, as you.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, it's interesting to think about what will happen. But I mean, there are already amazing festivals and like, but I think that the connection between taking care of our environment and earth and taking care of others and struggling for those who already are in a total climate crisis, and like the awareness of connecting queer clubbing, fighting for environmental justice, which has to do with racial justice, and I mean that maybe can go together, and that does fit also in a party or festive activist context. And I guess that for us, Strugglioki was really important, that in that sense that we wanted to bring together all these different civil rights movements that have so much in common. We can sometimes focus on what we don't have in common, but actually we have lots in common in relation to those we do not have anything in common with, you know? So kind of also wanting to point out that I think we're hundreds of millions who kind of want the same thing, kind of, you know, and to join forces and this way of creating activist clubs, I think, is a good format, because we need our desire and lust to be part of it. It has to be fun. We can't only work out of what you say, plikt.
Yeah, like sort of responsibility or
exactly.
or like
yeah.
I don't know the good word.
Yeah, like
verantwoordelijkheid.
what would you say? Yeah. I think.
Nice. Yeah, I totally agree. I think this is maybe a good final words.
Unless you have like a final note.
Oh, a final quote.
A final quote. Okay, then.
Yeah, or a final quote or a final note. That's as you wish.
Okay. I want to bring in a final quote, and it's also a quote of our journal. It's from Gloria Anzaldúa, and she wrote, "Nothing happens in the real world unless it first happens in the images in our heads."
Cheers to that.
Well,
cheers.
It was super nice talking to you, and thank you for making some time. And
thank you so much, and thanks Pop-Kultur for making these talks possible. And thank you for talking with us.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks for inviting us.